So hello again. We are in St. Joseph in Minnesota. We are the 26th November 2021, and we are with James KUEBELBECK. James,
Yes,
hello. How are you? Thank you
fine.
very much. Thank you very much. So, James, you was in the Navy,
Yes, I was in the Navy. I was aboard an aircraft carrier, the USS Valley Forge,
and which years roughly?
uh, about 1960, somewhere in there.
1960.
1960.
And
Oh, wait.
you know,
Yep,
I'm
1960, 61, yes.
I'm very interested in all UFO experiences, and I think you have a UFO experience here.
I would say yes, but for most of these experiences that people have, they keep to themselves because people would not believe them. But now, more and more people are coming forward with accounts of experiences with unidentified things. And first of all, I think UFO is not a correct term. I think it's UFO is unidentified flying objects. From what I witnessed and seen and what other people have said, they are not flying objects as we know them. They are airborne, but they are not flying in the physical sense. They are airborne and they are somehow controlled. But most people that have experienced anything like that just never share those experiences with anyone over the years, and neither have I. But one night aboard the Valley Forge, I went up on the flight deck. It was dark. Went up on the flight deck, get a breath of fresh air, and just just enjoy the cool air up there. And all of a sudden, I think there were 5 or 6 lights in the distance, and I thought they must be huge if I could see them in the distance. And they would, from the flight deck on an aircraft carrier, they say you can see about 38 miles to the horizon. And if these things were on the horizon, it looked like they were on the horizon because they would go down and they would disappear. So it would appear they were below the horizon, and then they would come back up again. But the more I looked at them, and there were a couple other sailors up with me, the more we looked at them, we realized they were much closer than we thought. They were much closer to the aircraft carrier than we thought. And if they were, that means they were going down into the water occasionally. Just go down into the water. And then they would come back up again. And they appeared to be bright lights, and they changed in color. They were bright orange, and they would shrink up. It looked like they would just shrink up like an eye would in bright light. They would just shrink up, and then they would expand again. And we thought, what could they be? So I ran down to our electronic shop, and a couple other airmen came up with me, and I said, "What? Look at that!" And then they said, "What the heck are those things?" So anyway, I have to preface this story with a little bit. I had bought when we were over in Spain, I had bought a couple pair of binoculars, one for a friend of mine at home and one for me. But at that time they allowed some merchants to come aboard ship and sell some of their items. I don't know if they allow that anymore, but anyway, so I bought 2 of those binoculars aboard ship, and they were in packages. Okay, well, the story was a lot of people bought binoculars when they were on shore, and when they brought them back to the ship, they discovered that some of the merchants had put different objects in their packages and wrapped them. And they got back to the ship, they had spent the money, and here was garbage in their packages. So they kind of warned us about that, buying ashore. Well, I bought these aboard ship, and the other airmen with me didn't know that I bought them aboard ship. So I kept them in my locker, and I hadn't opened them. So that night, and they always told me, up, KUEBELBECK, he bought a couple boxes of rocks, and in jest, but I had never opened them. So anyway, that night, some of the airmen were with me up on the flight deck. I ran back down to my locker and I opened one of the boxes, and some of the other airmen there said, "Where are you going?" I said, "You guys got to see what's up on the flight deck." So they followed me up there, and anyway, so then they were all taking turns looking at these things, and they were all saying, "What can they be? What can they be?" And I could hardly get the binoculars by myself. They were all grabbing them. "Let me see, let me see." Okay, so, all right, we watched them maybe for a while, and I'm leaving out many parts of this story for brevity, but finally the lights seemed to go into the water and never came back out. And we thought, this is impossible. What were they? So, all right, the next day, I had to go flying in the morning to check out some electronic equipment aboard one of the helicopters. And when we came back, I ran down to pick up one of the Valley Forge. They always put out a newspaper in the morning about the daily news in the States and whatever. And I picked up a copy of the Valley Forge newsletter, and there was nothing in it. And I had called the bridge the night before and asked them if they knew what those things were. And when I called the bridge, the ship made a turn away from those lights. And it was surprising. But anyway, so there was nothing in the newspaper. So I called the bridge again, and I said, "I'd like to speak to the duty officer that was on duty in the bridge last night." And they said, "You can't. We flew him off the ship this morning." And I thought, there's no way. And so I went to the operations office and asked if any planes had left the ship in the morning. And they said no, which was very surprising, because the only way they could have gotten back to the States was a fixed-wing aircraft, not a helicopter. They did not have enough fuel in them. So anyway, there were so many things happened that I'm leaving out here. But when I got back to the electronics shop, some of the sailors, I opened my locker, and some of the airmen saw that I had opened this box, this binocular box, and they said, "Ha ha ha! You couldn't stand it. You had to open that box, didn't you? A box of rocks." And a couple of the airmen with me said, "Well, you guys were using them last night up on the flight deck." They said, no, they couldn't remember a thing. Total.
They couldn't remember anything.
Could not remember. And there were about 30 guys up on the flight deck with me.
Ooh.
And only two guys, I'll remember their name the rest of my life. One was Ralph Armbrust. The other was Stanley Morris. And he was from Waterloo, Iowa. His dad used to work in a John Deere factory in Waterloo, Iowa. And the other guy was Ralph Armbrust. I always thought his name should have been spelled Armburst.
It was like someone or something clean your memory.
Clean their memory.
Their memory, not yours.
Not ours.
Yours and the other guy.
Not ours.
Wow.
Not ours.
Wow.
And we talked about it for days afterwards, and they said, we'll have a good story to tell our parents when we get home or whatever. But anyway, the next night, we were talking about it, and all three of us, and the next night, I was trying to go to sleep, and all of a sudden I knew there was something wrong. There was something wrong all day, that day. And I was ready to go to sleep the next night, and everything came back to me what had happened. And it was just totally unbelievable. And unbeknownst to me at the time, when I was being discharged from the Navy, these two guys came up to me and they said, "Jim," they said, "we got a story. We don't know what we can tell anybody. They wouldn't believe us." And that was the last thing they said to me. Anyway, so only recently, after all these years, I tried to get in touch with Armbrust. He passed away some years ago. Okay, so we kind of lost contact with each other like most military people do with their fellow airmen. But anyway, so I did get on the internet, and I found out where Stanley Morris lives in Florida now. And I found out his son's name, and I called his son. He lives in Rochester, Minnesota. And he gave me the phone number for Stanley Morris down in Florida. So I called down there recently, maybe a month or two ago. His wife answered the phone. I told her who I was. And she said, oh my gosh, she said, we had such good times together, sometimes out in Norfolk. I said, how is Stan? Can I talk to Stan? And you could tell she was almost crying on the phone. She said, he's here. He's in hospice. She said, he's dying. He can't talk to you. Oh. And I said, well, Mary Lee, I said, did he ever tell you about our experience about a UFO or unidentified flying object on the aircraft carrier? And she said, no, Jim, he never said a thing. The rest is written in what I have written up there. And there's so much more to the story that I haven't written down. But I wrote everything you see here. I wrote that night. I stayed up. I think I stayed up all night writing. I had to write it down. It was just something strange. And what happened after I saw the lights was even stranger. So.
And what do you think? What was that you saw? Because I just reading here.
I have no idea.
Something very interesting. You write here, the lights themselves seemed to be part of a pulsing, breathing, living thing.
Breathing thing, right? Because they would contract and they would just go, and they would contract, and they would just go, and they must have been. I couldn't tell. You couldn't tell from the distance. You couldn't tell how far away they were, but they were closer to our aircraft carrier than they were to the horizon, because we physically saw them go into the water. They would dip into the water, and then they would come up after a while and form a formation, and they would do the same thing again. I have no idea what they were, but it seemed like they were obviously controlled. They weren't an aircraft by any means. They weren't they were nothing like that. They were totally different.
But the lights were into the water.
Just sink right into the water and disappear, and then they'd come back up, and then they would do that thing again. We watched them for about a half an hour or so.
Half an hour.
Right, but what happened after that? I never asked the other two guys what their dreams were about. They did say, they said, if we told they said the strange dreams we had that night, same night as I did, they said, we're not even going to tell anybody, they were so weird.
So, it was something very strange. It was
more than strange.
More than strange. And after this, you say you feel not good the next day.
I felt something was missing. Something was missing.
Yeah.
But the next night, right before I went to sleep, it all came back to me, and it was so real.
But you was feeling
it was not a dream. It was so real. It was not a dream, and that's why I wrote all this stuff down that same night.
Yeah, you have very good down to writing this, because normally if you spend more time, you forget.
Oh, gee,
yeah. Yeah.
I just felt
very good.
I felt I had to write it down, and I never shared it with anyone except my family. Some years later.
This is very good. And do you have any more experiences with a UFO?
Not since.
Not since.
Not since.
But you spend a lot of time in the Navy. You was flying by night, by day.
Sometimes, yes. Yes.
And never, you was seeing again
Never.
anything more
No.
like this.
No.
Nothing
Absolutely.
explaining it in the
Absolutely
air.
not. But you know, I did share this story with some people who I found out were doing research on that kind of stuff. You know, I did share some of that stories. And a couple of these researchers told me, and I don't know what, I wouldn't know how to describe it. They said, this sort of thing has happened to Einstein, to Thomas Edison, to Tesla. They all said these kind of things came to them in a dream.
Yeah.
And they said, for some reason, they called the term, they said, you are a contactee. I said, what do you mean a contactee? They said, you were contacted from outside our human existence. And I said, well, what the heck does that mean? They said, you were given a message that you're supposed to share.
But they give you a message? Here's the message. So, and I have to make you a question.
Yeah.
What Dennis Stillings think about this encounter?
He said he's heard from other people similar encounters. But I don't know what he meant by that.
And what was the message?
It's in there. It's in there. I was shown some things.
You prefer?
No, that's okay. I was shown some things that are going to be. And one of the things I was shown was, what's the terminology for it? I'm trying to think now. A power source, an energy source that would be self-contained and would someday be everywhere around the world, and there would no longer, it would be in everybody's self-contained power source in homes, in factories, in industries, and no longer would there be electrical lines like you see on poles around the country and whatever. There wouldn't be any underground electrical sources. Everything would be self-contained. It would be like I'm not looking for the term, a continuous self-contained unit that runs forever. Almost no moving parts. Almost no moving parts.
Like a generator?
Yes.
Like a generator.
And no,
Power
very
generator.
few moving parts. There's a word for it, that's something that runs forever. It escapes me right now.
Oh, I saw part of the message. I will not reveal it here, but it's very interesting. So, James, after this experience and viewing this a lot of years ago, what do you think about this message they give you? What do you have to do with this
I
message?
think other people have been given the same message, and I think that's how some advanced technologies, or what we think are advanced technologies that we have today, cell phones and computers and all that stuff. I don't think the humans on this earth thought that up by themselves.
I agree. 100% with you. I agree.
It comes from a different source. And I just wonder, sometimes, you don't tell other people about it, but I sometimes wonder if things aren't being fed from the universe, whatever the universe is, that we are being fed different things at different times to advance our civilization. It's like a God-given thing. That's what I think. And I don't know where it comes from. I think I think there's two parts to us. There's a brain and a mind. Our mind is our everyday stuff. Our brain is our only connection to the universe. And most people don't realize that they can make that connection.
Before you tell me something about Tesla. Tesla, it's a person I have studied a lot, and Tesla never made a draft of a plan. Never.
Where did it come from?
Yes, and in an interview asked by this subject, they ask Nikola Tesla,
Yes.
how do you create your inventions? And Tesla say, when I'm going to sleep, someone or something connect with me.
Leonardo da Vinci was quoted as saying the same thing.
Yeah,
And even like
and give me all this information.
yes, even like something as simple, the Rubik's Cube. You know what the Rubik's Cube is?
I know it.
Okay.
I like a lot.
Okay, that came to him in a dream. How to make the connections. That came. He admits it. That came to him in a dream.
The inventor of the Rubik's
Cube. Yes.
Of the Rubik's
It
Cube.
came to him in a dream.
Wow.
Where did it come from?
I didn't have this information.
Where did it come from?
Yes.
Okay, so there's more going on than this interview in our lives. Yes.
So we have to discover that is that element is not in this interview and is in all the whole lives of the human beings. James, again, thank you very much to share your knowledge, to share your experiences, and to be I don't know the word in English, so hospitality to receive us in your home here in Minnesota. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.